Hello and welcome to some more Bobby Fischer action. So today I just wanted to show you in this video what happens when Bobby Fischer plays a 2100 rated opponent. So this game takes place in 1970 in Germany, and at the time, Fischer was in his prime. He was about to be world champion 2 years later. So what happens when probably the best player in the world at the time plays a 2100 player, who's not quite a chess master, but 2100 is an expert chess player, pretty strong player. So let's find out. Bobby Fischer had the white pieces, and he begins with e4, as he so often did throughout his career. Probably most of his games were started with e4. So we have e6, the French defense. And now the game continues with d4, grabbing space in the center. If your opponent lets you place both pawns there, then why not do it? Now, the French defense, the reason you played e6 was to be able to push this pawn and attack the e4 pawn. So Fischer defends with the knight, protecting that pawn. And now pressure is added here. The knight is pinned to the king, so it's no longer protecting this pawn. So Fischer relieves the tension by pushing forward with the pawn and gaining space in the center, kind of cramping black's position. Now the knight can no longer move out here, and the game continues with a common move in the French defense, pushing this c-pawn. So you're attacking a valuable central pawn with this less valuable flank pawn. And Fischer ignores that for the moment, attacking the more valuable bishop here, forcing black to make a decision to retreat or to capture here. So, capture, recapture, and now this pawn is protecting the d4 pawn that's under attack here. So what does Fischer's opponent do? He lines up here on Fischer's king. So, a 2100 player, he's trying to keep some pressure up here against Fischer. He's attacking this pawn with a threat of a fork here. And the game, at the same time, he's defending this pawn, of course, but, Fischer doesn't really want to capture that and have tripled pawns here. So the game continues with the pin of this pawn being broken here. And, because there was also the threat of, because of this pin, of just capturing, and then that pawn would not be able to recapture. So Fischer breaks the pin. Now the queen steps forward, adding more pressure here. So we have two attackers and only one defender. So what does Fischer do? Well, he defends the pawn here, which is under attack. But at the same time, he's threatening to capture this pawn and then the rook over here. So the computer says the best move is king to f8. Second best would be pushing the pawn to g6 here, but that would leave some dark squared weaknesses around the kingside position here, and that could be really dangerous, especially now that the dark squared bishop is gone. So Fischer's opponent steps over with the king, protecting this pawn, avoiding the danger of capturing the pawn and then the rook. So now there's a threat here on this pawn. So Fischer steps back to guard that pawn. The damage has already been done. Fischer has made the king move, and now black can no longer castle. And the king is kind of stuck in the center here. So now Fischer's opponent pushes with this pawn, and apparently we're all in book moves here still. 9 moves in, and This gives the bishop the chance to either fianchetto, but it'll be kind of blocked here. So, maybe it'll go here and try and trade off Fischer's bishop, the light squared bishop, and get rid of Fischer's bishop pair. So, Fischer finds the best move here, playing h4, which gains space on the king side here. So, this move for an average player, it could be hard to find. What does this move do other than gain space on the king side? It might allow this rook to come up here and help fortify the center. Lift the rook up, maybe move over here and help target the king. So the game continues with knight developing. And now Fischer just pushes that pawn even further. And it looks like the best thing to do is slow the momentum of that pawn. And that's what his opponent does. And also the computer even recommends king to e8, stepping back over here towards the center with the king, maybe getting ready to run to the queen side, running for its life. But the game continues with a rook lift, something that Magnus Carlsen has done quite often through his career, lifting a rook up and then over into the action, on the other side of the board or in the center. Here, it's helping protect here. Now, something else I wanted to look at. Let me go back a little bit here. We see that there was an option to go ahead for quite a while here to just capture, and then if recapture, the queen could capture in the center. So that might be something to take a look at. Let's see how far back that option was there. Let's see. So Fischer moves back here. And what if that move was made immediately? C takes d4, C takes d4, and we see that you cannot recapture here. And this is a pretty interesting lesson, because if the queen were to capture, you have this discovered attack on the king. A check here, and the queen would be captured. Or the queen would have to capture the bishop and then be captured by the pawn here. So, that is why this was not played. So, in the game, if we go back, we have this h-pawn running up the board. It's slowed down by black. And now the game continues with the rook lift, lining up. Always a good strategy when you can take a less valuable piece and line it up on the more valuable piece, even with pawns in between. Because now, right now, if this pawn moves, the queen could just capture the rook. But the game continues with black attacking here. Will the bishops be traded? It looks like the better move might be rook to f4, lining up on the king here, or knight to f3, just developing another piece. But Fischer captures, pulling the knight out to the edge of the board. Apparently it would have been better to capture with the queen, and then that leaves the knight available to move towards the center. So the game continues with Fischer lining up on his opponent's king. The queen retreats back here, getting ready to help guard this pawn in front of the king. The computer says that's a mistake, that there should have been an immediate push of this pawn attacking the rook. And after capturing en passant, the knight would be able to recapture, and the game would be about even here. The rook would be under attack and could just drop back here, but stay lined up on the king. But in the game, we had the queen dropping back. And now Fischer starts piling on the pressure here. So the knight has to move so the queen can protect that pawn. So the knight jumps up here. And, I guess the knight, that's pretty much the only spot it could have gone. Or the knight could have stayed there and queen to e8. Queen up here to e8 to guard would have been possible as well. So the game continues with the knight jumping up. Fischer trying to get another piece in on the action here. And now we have the rook, which was doing nothing in the corner, stepping over here, maybe preparing to open up the C file and target these pawns in the future. So Fischer presses up here to g4. He has the battery lined up on the king, so he wants to start breaking things open here around the king. It looks like the computer prefers rook to d1, lining up on the queen here, but Fischer starting kingside action over here. The queen drops back here to help defend. Computer doesn't like that. Apparently the king should have just started running, getting out of there, trying to head maybe over to the queen side. So Fischer continues his attack, pushing forward. That is ignored in favor of bringing this knight over here, maybe with the idea of jumping up here and defending, blocking this attack. The computer doesn't like that. Apparently c takes d4 would have been better. Because a lot of times if you have an attack on a flank, then a counterattack in the center can be a good way to go to stop your opponent's momentum and force them to deal with your attack in the center. Unless the attack on the flank is on the king, then you really have to watch out. So the game continues with Fischer breaking the pawns apart here. The rook jumps up, targeting this along with the bishop. It's starting to look pretty bad for Fischer's 2100 rated opponent. So, he tries to block the attack here. Now the rook is, not really trapped. Well, yeah, I guess it is with the knight going here. So, knight and rook are both covering that. What will Fischer do next? Well, he finds the best move. White is ahead by almost plus 2.6 here. And the king starts running for its life. But now we have this capture. So what should the opponent have done here? It looks like, once again, capture in the center is recommended. But the king starts running. And now we have an attack. Check, capturing the pawn, checking the king. If this pawn attacks, well then the queen could recapture this knight. And the king is, looking dangerously placed here in the center, especially if things start opening up. So the king runs back, which was the best move. Now we have the knight dropping back. The opponent tries to relieve the pressure by trading off, some of the pieces here. But after the recapture, we have the rook moving up to help defend this pawn, which is, under attack by this queen and rook battery here. So the game continues with Fischer capturing, tripling up pawns here. But after the recapture, the knight is no longer on the edge of the board, and maybe this knight will try and help defend. But Fischer brings his final piece that was sitting there in the corner into the action, checking the king. So the king runs back to where it was, an inaccuracy leading to a mate in 7. Apparently blocking with the knight to d7 would have been better, but at this point Fischer's opponent is losing. So if this were played, Well, then you have rook captures. And now, you know it's bad for Fischer's opponent when the best move recommended by the computer here is just to give up the queen by capturing the rook here. If something else were played, well then you also have this move, queen checking over here. So it is just looking really bad for Fischer's opponent. So the king, excuse me, let me go back a little bit here. So rook checks. King runs back to e7 to help guard this pawn here along with the queen. And then we have capture with check. Pawn recaptures. And now this brilliant move by Fischer. And this is where the game ends. So take a look at this, see if you can figure out why it ends. Unless you already looked up here and see that it leads to a mate in 3, or even 2 different mates in 1. So let's see, what could be played here. Well, it's black's turn. We see that the rook is cutting off the king from escaping here. The king could run up here, but if he does, then the queen will be captured. So, we take a look at this brilliant move. What are the options? If you capture with the pawn, so, if the pawn captures, well then the queen would deliver a mate by moving here because this rook is preventing the king from running. And once that pawn would capture, the queen would also be covering the f-file as well, as well as delivering the fatal check here. So what's another option? The pawn can't take, and if the king captures, well, then the queen goes here as well, attacking the king, preventing the king from going anywhere, and the rook does that as well. So just a brilliant move by Bobby Fischer here. Pretty awesome way to end the game. And of course, if the king runs, you could capture the queen. Let's see. But apparently capturing the queen is not best. There's an even better move, which is queen to f6. So after rook captures, well then it's not looking good because recapture, king to e7, and then this great possibility here. So the queen is cutting off the king's escape, along with the rook protecting that queen. And we see these 2 squares are cut off. The only ones that white is not attacking, but a pawn and queen block the king from running away. All right, so let me get rid of these moves that I added, and we'll see, this is where the game ended with this brilliant rook move. And let's see what the accuracy rating was here. Fischer played with a 96.8% accuracy rating versus 77.1% by his opponent. This is understandable. His opponent was a 2100 rated player, and Fischer was probably like 2700 something at the time. I think he may have been highest rated in the world around this time. Right before he won the world championship. So we see Fischer just kept the lead here. The game kind of dropped to almost even before Fischer started picking up steam and just, destroyed his opponent. All right. One brilliant move by Fischer. The inaccuracies. Fischer had 2 inaccuracies. His opponent had 4 and 3 mistakes. But Fischer played at a 2800 level versus 2050 by his opponent. And 100% opening accuracy by both players. So both of them played the opening well. But in the middle game, Fischer played with 95.9% accuracy versus 71.5% by his opponent. All right. Well, feel free to leave any comments. Like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.